Tom Corley is here, and you wrote a book called Rich Habits. There's a website, course. How would you call Rich Habits?
Yeah, so Rich Habits is richhabits.net is the website, and Rich Habits is, I have 7 books. Rich Habits, the first one.
So you're new at this, just seven books?
Just 7.
Just scratching the surface of this habit thing.
That's right. Yeah, well, the research, I gathered 364 data points over a 5-year period, interviewed 233 millionaires, 128 poor people. It was harder to find the poor people because I'm a CPA. It's easier to find the rich people.
That's a great world to live in, though.
Yeah.
My family, when I was growing up, was easy to find the poor people. It was hard to find the rich.
Yeah, well, we were rich. In my family, we were rich, and then we were poor. And at age 9 is when everything turned in my family.
And you went poor or went rich?
Yeah, we went poor. And it's a long story, but basically I spent, the majority of my childhood poor.
Middle class or poor?
Poor.
Like
almost.
Did you ever have food stamps?
No, but we almost lost our house, and there were 11 in our family. So if we went homeless, we were in big trouble.
So I remember going to elementary school and having to use the free meal ticket because we were on welfare or whatever that was. And that was super embarrassing.
Yeah, that's abject poverty. And then there's poor, people that just don't have enough money to pay their bills, and their living in their home takes up most of their income, and that's kind of where we were.
Well, and that's where a lot of the middle class, and I would say the world is. And our listeners aren't just in America, by the way. A lot of listeners in India and all over the world. So when we talk about rich and poor, it's such a disparity because there's so many. Everyone thinks everyone in America is rich, but everything also is more expensive.
That's right.
So there are plenty of people, and we're recording this in Memphis, Tennessee.
Right.
You can go 60 miles and people have no running water all across parts of the U.S., but that's not the norm. That's not the outback of Afghanistan, et cetera. Yeah. And so you've studied what people do poorly and richly. And so you have so much study, we can't do all of it. 300 points. Is there sort of a top 1 or 2 habits that you think someone listening that is not of the rich class could start doing today that would begin to make their brain more conditioned to create more wealth?
Yeah, so like 10,000 feet in the air, it really boils down to the 2 things that I found were that rich people invest their time and poor people spend their time.
That's a great distinction. Invest their time versus spend their time.
Right. And the rich people engage in something called growth habits. These are, I started at reading to learn from my research about 20 minutes a day. I have to do a lot of reading as a CPA, financial planner, but I used to bundle it, and I would spend like a half of a Saturday reading through everything. Well, what I found out that the wealthy people did is every day for 30 minutes or more, they read to learn. And for the most part, depending on what path you were on, it had to do with whatever their career was. So if you're a big company climber, it had to do with your company and your industry.
So they didn't read fiction. They read to learn things about what makes them money.
Right. And they did that first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Because first thing in the morning is when they had the most control over their time.
So I call it in my book, the morning ritual. Something that you do something consistently in habits. And the reason I really wanted you on the show is I have also come to the conclusion after also studying this for 20, 30 years, that it's not just a strategy because you outlined 4 different strategies. It's not only entrepreneur. See, one of the problems I had when I first started studying this is I thought the only path was being an entrepreneur.
Right.
But there's so many people that they get money through inheritance. They get money through selling a business. They get money through working a 9-to-5 job. All your accountants, the doctors and lawyers, they're very wealthy.
Yeah.
And then they invest their money and then that becomes their wealth. There's so many different paths.
But
what I realized was most people don't even know that there's 4 paths or 10 or whatever the number may be, but they don't believe they can get there anyway. So you have a couple things. The belief system, and if you're listening to this podcast, most people are kind of on the edge. Oh, you know what? I've listened to Bart a lot. Maybe I could do that.
Right.
Then they have to say, what is the habits? And I like it akin to bodybuilding or that. There's a very specific sequence and everybody kind of knows how you build a strong body, but you can't do it once. No. It's every day, every other day. You got to have
total consistency. And that's why the habits, I think, popped up in my research, because I didn't go into this study to study habits.
You weren't going to be the habit guy. No, that wasn't your mission.
I knew about as much as habits as the guy sitting next to me on the subway in New York. But I had to become a habit expert, which meant I had to read about 20 books on neuroplasticity, neuroscience, the brain. And I did become somewhat of an expert on it because I needed to understand how habits were formed so I could advise people, hey, I don't want to just say this is the habits that you need to have. I want to tell them this is the habits that you need to have, and this is how you go about forging them. See, the big thing, Bart, a lot of people don't know is you don't need to break bad habits. You just need to forge keystone habits. Mm-hmm. And the keystone habits create complementary habits. And then they go after, like sort of Pacman, they go after the contradictory habits. They destroy them. Like if you decide I'm going to want to lose weight and because you're too fat, well, you start running, and next thing you know, you're cutting back on how much you smoke cigarettes. You cut back on how much you eat, how much alcohol you consume, because it creates these complementary habits.
The keystone habit, if you're committed to it, begins to sort of domino effect the other habits where it's less significant, because now you're focused. You go to bed earlier. You get more sleep, because if you're going to go jogging or whatever it is, I like that.
Yeah.
Create a keystone, because breaking habits are hard for people.
Yeah, you can't break a habit. I'm going to tell you right here.
I don't know if you can't, but would you say it's not necessary?
The only way to break a habit neurologically is if you don't engage in the habit for, they think, around 20 years. The glial cells in the brain start to tear apart or dismantle the habit synapse.
The pathway, the neural pathway that's sort of created.
Right. Normally what happens with habits is if you know what, like a freight train, and it has, the different cargo sections of it, you can actually co-opt an existing habit synapse. And it's almost like inserting your new habit into this railroad freight train, and then away it goes. The brain won't fight you on that. If you're creating from scratch a brand new habit that requires creating a synapse, the brain is going to fight you. It's going to try and stop you. So what you have to do is engage in baby steps. You have to do, if you want to run 10 minutes a day. No more than 15 minutes, because the brain's going to put the stop sign up and say you're using up too much brain fuel, which is glucose, and it doesn't want to do that because the brain can't store glucose. So it's got to reach out to the body, and it doesn't want to do that. It's too much effort. So it's going to put up the stop sign. So what you have to do is these baby steps, and also associate with people that have the habits that you want. Now, if you go to a gym, if you want to gain some muscle and not be fat or not be skinny, you want to go into a gym where people have those habits. And the interesting thing is Dr. Christopoulos from Yale found, when he was doing an obesity study, that habits spread like a virus through your social networks. 60% of the obese people that he was studying, they had family and friends that were obese. It's not a coincidence.
Only 60%. I would think it would be higher, because you're getting that social confirmation, you're getting that validation, you're getting the peer pressure in the direction of whatever your bad habit is. Right. Yeah, but I think what that does is that helps release. Are you familiar with the whole system of how to break belief systems? Like there's a whole NLP, there's a whole bunch of things on that. And part of that structure is the easiest way to do it, which you've seen in religions around the world and multi-level marketing, all this stuff, is you put enough testimonials of other people that did it, you begin to think, well, maybe if all these people can also do it, maybe I can too. And that's the positive of it. Like that's the positive. Hey, you know what? And you see the crazy laying on hands in these churches, like, oh my God, it's belief. So social conditioning is going to help reinforce your habit. The first is the belief, can I do it and can I change? Let's get back to the wealth habit. You have one, which is the first thing, which is change your neurosynaptic pathway. What was the first one? The belief and the small habits.
Yeah. So if you want to change your
keystone habit, that was the number one.
If you want to change your habits, you want to have the most impact over your life, you adopt these things that I call keystone habits. Now, in my book, Rich Habits, I have 10 of them. They're the 10 core ones, but there's actually 20 of them that I cover in Rich Habits, Poor Habits. So the 10, if you adopt it, all you need is one keystone habit a year. It will create other complementary, positive, good habits. And that's how you start to change your life. It also, the amazing thing that happens is, because you're doing something good, it changes your mindset from negative to positive. It doesn't take long. It takes only about 2 months. But now that besides the habit starting to form, your mindset begins to change. And the self-made millionaires in my study all had one thing in common. I think 88% of them had a positive mental outlook. And that was critical for every path, but particularly for the big company climbers and the dreamer entrepreneurs, because they have to solve problems, big problems. The entrepreneur, if it doesn't solve their problem, they could go bankrupt. The big company climber doesn't solve their problem, they're not getting promoted to the next level.
Problem solver or positive outlook? Because positive outlook doesn't seem like that's hard. That's easy to define.
Positive is
a personality test or personality trait. Optimism?
So it's having an optimistic outlook on life, an outlook where you're hopeful, not hopeless. And it's so critical because there was a study that was done where they found if you have a negative mental outlook, it activates or it elevates the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system.
Is that the fight or flight part?
That's the fight or flight part. That's where a lot of our emotions are. So when that amygdala is activated, it has an effect of shutting down or tampering down the prefrontal cortex, which is where a lot of your creativity and your logic and your good decision making takes place. So when the amygdala is elevated, you're making poor decisions. Negative people make bad decisions. And a lot of the times when you're negative, you're in a negative emotional state, you're making very poor decisions that impact your life. You cannot make emotional decisions. They're always bad decisions. You want to make logical decisions. Having a positive mental outlook is critical to decision making.
That's interesting. Now, I've talked about how you program optimism and everything from music to emotional state to get rid of toxic people in your life, to the belief systems, to journaling every day, opening your day with appreciation. There's dozens of ways to do it. You created these 10 keystones. Are any of those designed specifically to create more optimism and more hope?
Yeah. When I talk about the positive mental outlook habit, I just don't leave it there on the table. I say, this is how you create it. Gratitude is the gateway to positivity.
I agree.
If you look at your life and you say, oh, I don't have this or I don't have that, you're operating from scarcity. And you're actually programming your mind, your subconscious, to deliver to you more scarcity. If you look at your life and say, oh my gosh, I'm so happy my car started today. I'm so happy I have $20 in my pocket. I'm so grateful that I got to work without any accidents or getting into an accident or any backups or anything like that. You express gratitude for every little thing. It shifts the mind from negative to positive, and it opens the doorway. As I said, it's the pathway to a positive mental outlook. And what the life, the universe, which we still don't understand, it has
and some
a way.
of us don't use that word unless you live in the West Coast and you have a lot of patchouli and you meditate quite a bit, because the universe is going to pay my rent whether or not I work or not.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in the law of attraction. I believe the law of attraction is action. It requires action. I believe you have to have that positive mental outlook. Your brain, we still don't understand the complexities of our brain, but I believe it's a lot more complex and powerful than we understand. And I believe our consciousness is connected. Human consciousness is connected. I don't know how, but it is. And you have examples of this. People, they call it the third eye, or the pineal gland. I don't know, but all I'm telling you is that when you keep a thought in your head, a positive thought of where you want to be, and I do this every day. My desired outcome in life is to be J.C. Jobs. He's one of the main characters in my book. He's the future ideal version of Tom Corley. So every day I am striving to become J.C. Jobs. J.C. Jobs is way better than me. I suck compared to J.C. Jobs, but I'm always striving to be J.C. Jobs.
I like that.
And I have him in 3 of my books, and mainly because I think I was writing that for myself as sort of the blueprint of who I want to be, not just for my family, but for my kids. And I look at it every day. When I'm driving to work, I always say to myself, I am J.C. Jobs. Tom Corley is J.C. Jobs. And I think that's a key for people, is to have some type of idealized version, maybe of yourself. I call that J.C. Jobs. But if you have that, your focus and your conscious thought attention on that, you're focused on the destination, on the end. Let the subconscious figure out how to deliver to you what you need to deliver the opportunities, the path, the actions you need to take. Don't worry about all that nonsense. Just focus on the end, and the subconscious will go to work behind the scenes, and it'll manifest these things.
Let me give you an interesting metaphor. I got to drive in a race car a couple months ago, and before we got on the racetrack, and these $250,000 McLarens, he said, "Now, whatever you do, don't look at the wall. Look at the point on the track where you want your car to go, because your body will follow your eyes." And he goes, the only time anyone ever hits the wall is because they were thinking about hitting the wall. Right. And of course, the metaphor is so obvious, it hit you in the face. But when you're in a car going 100 miles an hour, you're like, oh, that's good advice. Right. I need to look at where I want to go, because you're right. Your unconscious mind skips all the troubles and continues focusing on what you're calling J.C. Jobs. Right. Did you see Matthew McConaughey's one of his speeches? I think he won an Oscar.
Wow, what a speech!
He said,
I have that saved. It's such an outstanding speech.
But it said what you said, and if you're not paying attention, he sounds like he's being cocky. He's like, well, the Matthew McConaughey in the future thanks you. And I knew it. He didn't say he knew he was going to get the award. That's not what he said. What he said was, every morning, I just want to be a better version of myself.
Yeah.
And in 20 years ago, the better version of myself was here. I may be messing up his speech, but he was sort of had that idea of the future self.
Right.
And if you can visualize the future self, you can achieve it by focusing on that. And I don't want to disparage the word universe. I make fun of everybody because I'm a comedian, but I do actually like the law of attraction mission. What I get stuck is that there's no science behind it. I love the science. I like the neural pathways. I like the idea that if you are optimistic, and here's what you said, if you are optimistic, the brain fires in certain ways, blood goes to a certain part of the brains, you make better decisions. So this is not hairy-fairy. If I'm optimistic, the universe is going to hand me a bunch of money. You're saying physiologically, if you do these things and do these habits, the part of your brain that makes better decisions, then you're happier every day. And you're happier every day. People like to be around you.
Right.
People like to be around you. Guess what? Opportunities show up.
Yeah. And let's talk about opportunities for a minute there, because my research dove into this. This was really interesting. You ever been to an airport and all you hear is just buzzing around you, right? Then somebody amidst the 1,000 voices screams out, "Bart," and you immediately turn around.
Right.
That's your reticular activating system. It's part of the thalamus system. The thalamus is the gatekeeper to environmental external stimuli. So when you set goals or you have a dream that you're pursuing, it gets programmed into the subconscious. But more importantly, the subconscious and the thalamus and the reticular activating system work in unison behind the scenes to try and seek out environmental stimuli that will help you reach your dreams and your goals. So you might see an opportunity that you saw 100 times for the first time because you decided to have a dream, pursue a dream, or set goals behind that dream. Now, all of a sudden, you've got these three parts of the brain working in unison, trying to, it's like turning on a switch.
Yep.
You turn on a switch when you pursue dreams and goals, and the switch is the thalamus. It's the gatekeeper. You know, when you go in anesthesia, I don't know if you know this, the thalamus shuts down. You're actually unconscious. You're not conscious human being when you're under anesthesia. The thalamus shuts down. So there's no connection to the environment.
Oh, wow.
So it's very interesting. And that's why I study the brain, because all of this stuff is connected. So if you want to be successful in life, you have to pursue dreams and set goals behind those dreams. Every dream has about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 goals behind it. Once you realize that dream, it's like a rung on the ladder. You pursue the next dream. That's another rung. And as you get up the ladder, you climb to the top. And after you get to the top, you realize, hey, I'm living the life of my dreams. That's what it's all about. It's a process. We were talking about processes. It's a process being successful. But I will tell you this. You have to pursue wealth or success in the path to wealth that's right for your personality. If you're an introvert, you have no business being an entrepreneur or a big company climber. You can be a virtuoso, you can be a saver investor, but you can't be one of those two. If you're an extrovert and you are sitting behind a desk because you have a 9-to-5 job, you're going to hate your life because that's an entrepreneurial trait.
Or it's a salesman trait within an organization.
You have to be out and about.
Right.
And also you have to be a dopamine addict in the big company climber and in the entrepreneur path, but you don't in the saver investor path or the virtuoso path.
And by the way, Saver Investor Fast is the slowest path.
32 years.
However, it's a very highly secure. So if security is a high value and you want to be a postman, you can absolutely get there in 32 years.
Right.
But most people in this generation, even me at my age, I don't have 32 years to save.
Right.
So I was always the entrepreneur path, and therefore that was the only path I knew. Now that I kind of know the other ones, I've got my fingers and my investments in all the other investments in real estate in this, and I've begun to diversify. But when I was younger, because I'm an extrovert and because I'm overconfident, I always thought my businesses were going to work.
Right.
And I failed a lot, Tom.
Yeah. Well, all entrepreneurs go in with rose-colored lenses because why? They are entrepreneurs because they have a positive mental outlook. They have this this belief that they can do just about anything. And, it's true, but you're going to have to fail your way to success. And in my study, 34% of the entrepreneurs failed at least once in business.
At least once. I would think it'd be more. That's amazing.
But they were in my study because they got up. They got up off the ground. And the other interesting thing is, of all the paths, the entrepreneur path was the shortest path to wealth. 12 years.
Really?
Yep. 12 years, and it was the largest accumulation of wealth, 7.4 million on average. The Saver Investors was about 3.3 million. The Big Company Climbers was about 3.4 million. The Virtuosos, I think they were 3.9 million.
This is
The
a
four
wealth,
paths.
net wealth, like completely.
Yeah, net investable assets is
Net
how I
investable
really
assets.
measure it. I'm
Right.
a financial planner, so I look at net investable assets.
So in your mind, that 3 to 4 million, you're set for life.
Yeah, you're set. It depends where you live. It
Sure.
depends on your standard of living. But if you have a fairly modest standard of living, you could retire on $1.5 million.
Right.
Right. It just
Yep.
depends on your standard of living
And how long you live. And all
yeah,
that
New
stuff.
Jersey is expensive. If I was saying, if anybody's listening from New Jersey, the New York metropolitan area, you need at least 3.2 million. In California, probably 3.6. So it all depends on where you live.
Have you ever had your hearing analyzed? I'm surprised
Never.
with all your neurological, you've never had this. It's so interesting because everything you're saying, I've been writing my books for 10 years. The reticular activator system is the magic question. The difference is I had this teacher that taught me this physiological map called handwriting analysis, which because he was really good, I'm really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them are good, just like not all accountants are good and not
Right.
all other people are good. You have a lot of brilliant things about you. So stop me if I'm incorrect on anything, but you do have a fast mind. You get irritated with people who think and drive in the slow lane because you're much faster. You can finish these people's sentences. So you being around very cumulative, slow talking people will be difficult for you.
Yeah, I can't handle it. We go to the beach. We live by the beach. My wife loves the beach, so it was her dream, so it became my dream. We buy a house down by the beach. I sit on the beach. I'm there an hour, Bart, and I'm actually absolutely. If it was a gun around me, I think I would take it to my head. I can't stand it. I have to be doing something. I have to be physically or mentally engaged. That's me. I've always been that way.
But it's a fast mind. And what I'm saying is there's a learning style and a speaking style, which is great. You actually have a tendency to need your space. So you said you're married, but
Yeah.
she needs to know that you can be alone for 8 hours. And, you're talking
Yeah.
about it like
I have
that.
my dungeon in my office. That's where my laboratory where I do all my book writing and research.
Well, accountants have a bad rap because sometimes they don't have great personalities.
Right.
And part of being a race car driver, an accountant, is they tend to have small writing. Small writing means concentration on one thing at a time, which you do have. You've written 7 books.
Right.
That's a concentrated effort.
Yeah.
The people like the hostess at the local barbecue restaurant, she's talking to everybody. She's friendly. Those big bubbly writers are the exact opposite of you.
Right.
So the writing does pull like general temperament, but you do a fast mind, you handle criticism. This D like this is slightly sensitive criticism, like if your wife criticized you, but I don't know if it's strange on your street. You'd
I hated
really
it.
care.
That's why I own my business. I hated when supervisors, depending on the supervisor, because I worked for a big, one of the big 4 at the time, and he just a negative criticism I got. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I hated that. I feel like if you're a mentor to people, they'll be successful. And that means you have to give them feedback, you have to give them criticism, but it doesn't have to be negative criticism. Not all the time. There's a way. You just don't bang on a photocopier because it's not working. You got to figure out what's wrong with it. So I think a lot of managers they're in the wrong field. They shouldn't be managing anyone because they don't have the patience to mentor people. And that's what a manager is. That's what their primary job is, to mentor people.
The last thing's going to be writing, and we'll move on to wrap up. But the whys have to do with trust and how many people in your life. And I think you're real happy with your lovely wife.
Yeah.
Like you don't need hundreds of friends. You're very monogamous. You're totally happy in that relationship. And there's nothing in here that says that people could change your mind.
No,
Isn't
the
that
way I
nice?
look at it, Bart, is I have one wife. Why would I want another woman in my life? She yells at me all the time, but do this, do that. I'm only kidding. It's a joke. No, I love my wife. We are monogamous. That's the way we were raised. I feel like trust is one of the most important character traits a person can have. And you breach that trust when you have infidelity.
Well, Henry says you're trustful. It also says you're trustable. So you're honest and trustable. I would invest my money with you. I think you're all right, Tom.
Yeah, well, I was in the seminary for 6 months, and I told my mother, who wanted me to be a priest, I said, Mom, I can't. I just found out I'm going to have to not have sex for the rest of my life. And I think I want to have kids, and I think I'm going to be a CPA. And she said, well, if you're not going to be a priest, CPA is probably the next best thing.
Because you probably won't get laid there either.
yeah. Story of my life.
So tell us where to go. If you want to get the book, The Rich Habits, you have 7 versions of it.
Yeah.
Is it richhabits.net?
Yeah, richhabits.net. And I have a couple of free ebooks. You can get my articles. I write almost every day, my research articles. There's Rich Habits, Rich Kids, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life. There's a bunch of them. Effortless Wealth is really on the Saver Investor path. That teaches you the financial principles you need. So there's a lot of different good information.
I'll tell you a little marketing tip. You need to have a little free survey that says what kind of a wealth path you take.
Yeah.
And then divide them in the 4 categories. Mm-hmm. And then a thank you page on one of the 4 books.
Yeah, I have actually a test that you can
that's
take.
What you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I created a test. And if you take it, you'll find out which path to wealth that you should be on.
I hope all my subscribers check it out. It's very similar to my books, but you know what? When people read one book, they're going to read 10 because we're constant learners.
Right.
We want to keep learning and find those small distinctions. And maybe that one little thing that you said differently than what I said is the difference that they can switch that. And all of a sudden in 5 years, they're like, listen to that interview with Tom and Bart, and I'll be darned, I got $3.3 million. Yeah. And then you have to give us a commission. Send checks to P.O. Box. Wishful thinking. Tom's good to be you, man.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bart. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.